The dust has settled. The draft is done. Um, what do we realistically think of some of these guys? Today, we're going to focus on one, which is our number one pick. What do we expect? All that and more on this, the No Horsing Around podcast. Okay, so I got to thinking more and more about Laiatu Latu and what we are realistically expecting from him as kind of that s- pass rusher, number one edge, number one player in the draft, number one defensive, excuse me, number one defensive player of the draft, first defensive player of the draft taken, right? So we start to wonder, what do we expect from him, right? What do we think he's capable of doing? Um, and I kind of look at it, we've heard Mel Kiper and Matt Miller and um, other Colts podcasters and kind of the other people in the draft and things like that talk about that. As long as the neck is good and he's coming in, you're kind of, because he's most pro ready, you're kind of expecting him to walk into double digit sacks. And it's a great question to think about, right? Like, so what are some of these expectations that we should have for him? And some of that is like, I want to look back at precedent of some of these guys that we see in the NFL and we see get taken high and early, right? That we see go. And what do they do in college beforehand? And then what do they do their rookie seasons, right? So, I mean, looking through, obviously some of the ones that come to mind, right, are Nick Bosa. How did Nick Bosa do before he came to the NFL? Nick Bosa was a high draft pick, right? I mean, he was what? He was what pick was he? I'm trying to remember. He was top five pick. We'll just go with that, right? And in college, he played 3 years at Ohio State, 5 sacks, 8.5 sacks, 4 sacks. Right. We know that Laiatu Latu, right off the top, right off the jump, we know that he had 10 sacks and then 12 and a half this past season. So we know he had about 22, 23 sacks the last 2 years. Right. So you look at Joey Bosa, he had 16 and then he had six. The year he had six, obviously, we all remember he got hurt. He opted out kind of the rest of the season. How did he do, though, coming in into his rookie season? His rookie season, he strolls in and he gets himself 9 sacks right off the jump, right? So almost double digit sacks kind of coming in, and he's considered obviously a very dominant defensive lineman, a very dominant edge. You look at his brother, Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa, high pick, top five pick in the draft, coming out of Ohio State. Also, 3 years, and he had 7.5, 13.5, 5. Right? He played a couple less games his last season. You know, how did he do? I mean, so the expectations, you're coming in high yet again, just like Latu. How did he do his rookie season? He comes in, he has 10.5 sacks, double digit sacks. Obviously, you look through his career, he's had double digit sacks one, two, three, 4 times, right? So, I mean, he's had 67 sacks in his career so far in the NFL. I'd say that's pretty productive, pretty good. If you can get that, obviously, that's a huge thing. So, I mean, that's another one. And then, you can kind of jump into the way back a little bit with some of these guys, right? Like, we all know who ate the Colts alive last year in one of the games. It's Myles Garrett, right? He was the number one overall pick. And how did he do when you look at him in college? Similar to Laiatu Latu, way more off the charts, obviously. 12 and a half, 19 and a half, 15. There's a reason why he was the number one overall pick. Now, what did he do when he came in? 7 sacks. But then all he's done since is double digit 13 and a half, 10, 12, 16, 16, 14. That's just lights out ridiculous when you look at it, right? But he came in, high pick, 7 sacks, right? So you can kind of, and then you can kind of go a little higher up, right? Like we all know a player that we all liked in free agency, right? Was Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he came into the league, and how did he do in college first? He played 4 years at Kentucky. Let's remind that in his last season, he had 17 sacks. Strolled in, high pick, came in 10 and a half sacks, but then kind of tallied off 2.5, 7.5, 7, 17 and a half during his contract year. So, I mean, when you look across this, and obviously, I mean, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about probably one of the best defensive players, which is TJ Watt, right? TJ Watt, when you're looking at him in college, he played 2 seasons, 1.5 sacks his first, 15 and a half. Now he went later in the first round, right? But he came in, and off of his, he come in right off the bat, seven sacks, right? Like 7 sacks. And then all he's done since then, 13, 14 and a half, 15, 22 and a half, 5, 19. He's turned into that. So when I say all this, I use these examples because I think past precedent is important, right? When you're looking at Laiatu Latu, what do you think he's going to do? I think it helps to look back at some of the top edges that have come in the last, 10 plus years. And how did they look in college compared to him? And then what did they do when they got to the pros? A great season as a rookie looks around, is double digit sacks, but it's not always sitting there. We saw that only a couple of these guys got double digit sacks their first season. Even Myles Garrett didn't get double digit sacks. So is it realistic to expect 10 sacks? It's a great question. I don't know. I think we can expect double digit sacks, but I think but looking at past precedent, it's not the end of the world if he doesn't. It's going to be a very interesting thing. Drop it in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. Hearing all these stats, what are your expectations for Laiatu Latu? Are they realistic? Is double digit sacks a realistic expectation for a rookie coming in? Looking at past precedent, I don't know if it is. It depends on the rest of it and how he matures and what he does, right? Now, he's older than some of these guys, but I want to hear from you guys in the comments. What do y'all think? As always, you guys, please like, share, subscribe, comment, all those great things. And as always, I love you. He's not sitting next to me, and I know Zach loves you, and the Colts love you too. I'm out.